Hello my audiophile friends. Today I'm going to be reviewing the brand new Cerwin-Vega LA110 subwoofer. In this video I'll go over the value proposition of this subwoofer, how it sounds, and then at the end we'll do an SPL test using the intro scene from the movie Doom. As you guys know, I previously reviewed the LA165 bookshelf speakers and I thought they offered phenomenal value for money. Will the LA110 offer that same value? Let's find out. So what do you get for your $399? For starters, you get a pretty decent 10-inch driver rated for 200 watts of peak power, a surprisingly good and well-built cabinet, and a Class AB amplifier. I will talk more about the amplifier later in the review. Cerwin-Vega even double-boxed the subwoofer to ensure that it will arrive safe and sound to its new owner. The owner's manual is well written, but is pretty vague about the amplifier specifications in terms of power rating. You also get a power cord and a pretty nice grill that is made from MDF instead of plastic. Even the mounting feet on the bottom of the subwoofer are interchangeable, so if you have speaker spikes or the SVS isolation feet, you can install them with relative ease. The LA110 is offered in 4 finishes: black, white, cognac, and espresso. My subwoofer is finished in the espresso version. All in all, not a terrible first attempt from Cerwin-Vega since getting the band back together again, but there is room for improvement, which I will explain later. If you'd like to learn more about the LA110 specifications, cabinet quality, and driver, then check out my Look Inside video. In my Look Inside video, I go over the TS parameters of the driver, construction quality of the cabinet, and then take a look at the amplifier. I'll leave a link in the description. I'm going to begin by setting up the subwoofer in my upstairs living room system. This room is equipped with a Rotel RSP1580 processor, a Rotel RMB1575 amplifier, and a pair of Sonus Faber Venner AS speakers. This room can be very challenging for subwoofers to fill with adequate bass because it's a part of an open floor plan design. This means the living room, dining room, and kitchen are all open to each other and are basically one big room. I would consider this room to be large in size, and it's about 900 square feet. If you have seen my previous review videos, then you know I like to use War of the Worlds to test subwoofers out with. But lately, I have also been using Tenet because it also has some pretty bass-heavy soundtracks. In my opinion, I think both of these movies are great to test out subwoofers with, and I'm sure there are other movies as well, but these are the two that I like to use most. As I watched War of the Worlds, I could tell the subwoofer was having a little trouble filling my rather large room with bass at my normal listening volumes. Every time an alien machine would stomp around or shoot their weapons, you could hear the subwoofer start to distort during some of those really heavy bass scenes. If I dialed back the volume on the subwoofer, then the distortion was gone and I had clean bass, but not quite enough to satisfy my needs for this large room. I get the feeling the amplifier is the cause of the distortion and is probably running out of steam well before the driver, which I'll talk more about later. In a previous review video, I tested the JBL 550p in this same room, and it also had a little trouble filling this room with bass, but not nearly as bad as the LA110. If you are a die-hard Cerwin-Vega fan that has a large theater room and must have a Cerwin-Vega branded subwoofer, then I would highly recommend getting 2 of them. With 2 subwoofers, you should have plenty of headroom to satisfy most people's bass needs during those movie nights. If I put the subwoofer in a small or medium-sized room, then the performance was much better. Room size has a huge impact on a subwoofer's performance, so you definitely want to size the subwoofer to the room accordingly. When I placed the LA110 in my bedroom system, then this subwoofer had no problem delivering authoritative bass that I could feel. My bedroom is about 320 square feet in size, and in this room the bass notes were strong, clean, and pretty natural sounding. During my movie watching sessions, I tested this subwoofer in various room sizes and thought it performed relatively well as long as the room wasn't too big. I didn't hear any port noise while watching my movies, and I thought the bass was clean and pretty authoritative for what a budget subwoofer like this can deliver. I think if you're reasonable with your expectations and place it in a room that is under 400 square feet, then I think most people will be pretty happy with the LA110's performance. Now let's see how this subwoofer performs in a music setting. For my music testing, I popped in my favorite 70s, 80s, and 90s music that I like to listen to. In my opinion, I thought the LA110 did much better as a music subwoofer than as a home theater subwoofer. Some movies can have extremely low frequency bass notes that can extend well below 25 Hz. Producers use these low frequency notes for dramatic effect and realism. The problem is some of the subwoofers with smaller drivers and weaker amplifiers can have problems producing them. However, when it comes to music, most of the instruments in the music that I listen to don't play below 40 Hz, which isn't as demanding on a subwoofer versus some of the movies that I watch. I thought the subwoofer did a pretty decent job with reproducing low-frequency music notes at my normal listening volumes considering the price category that this subwoofer competes in. I also noticed the subwoofer blended pretty well with a variety of different speakers I tried, including towers and bookshelves. In my opinion, some ported subwoofers can be difficult to blend with bookshelf speakers because you have to cross over the subwoofer a bit higher, which can sound a bit unnatural. But the LA110 sounded pretty seamless with both my KEF Q350s and Cerwin-Vega LA165s. I especially liked how the LA110 looked next to my bigger Cerwin-Vega LA365s. You gotta admit, they do look pretty sweet together. However, like most subwoofers in this price category, it can sound a bit one-notish at times, but the fidelity is on par with other subwoofers that I have listened to at this price point. As long as I was at my normal listening volumes, which is still pretty loud, the subwoofer sounded pretty good and would keep up with my mains with no problems. However, if a good song came on that I wanted to crank up the volume for, I could hear the subwoofer start to distort a tiny bit. I think a lot of the loudness issues surrounding the LA110 are centered around the amplifier. I think the amplifier is running out of steam well before the driver. As you know, I was having similar distortion problems during my movie watching sessions too. I think it's time to figure out what's going on with this amplifier. Let's put it on the bench and measure its continuous power, because I have a feeling the amplifier just doesn't have the power to push this driver to its full potential. Now let's find out if the amplifier is the weak link. As you know, I think the amplifier is running out of steam well before the driver. I will be connecting the amplifier to my digital oscilloscope to measure the amplifier's continuous power. The DC resistance of the Cerwin-Vega driver is 4 ohms, so I connected a 4 ohm dummy load to the amplifier and then slowly turned up the volume until the signal started clipping. Keep an eye on the peaks of the sine wave. A good clean signal will have a nice rounded point, while a signal that is clipping will no longer have a rounded point and instead will be flat with noise. As you can see from the video, once the RMS voltage gets above 13 volts, the amplifier starts to clip. When I do the math, 13 volts squared divided by the 4 ohm load is roughly 42 watts. As I get closer to 15 volts, or almost 60 watts, then the signal starts to get pretty ugly. Cerwin-Vega provided this subwoofer with a phenomenal cabinet and a pretty decent driver, but then packaged it with an amplifier that just doesn't have the horsepower to move it. I contacted Cerwin-Vega to see if the amplifier in my subwoofer was faulty, but I didn't hear back before the release of this video. If I do hear back, I will post their reply in the description. Crap, I forgot to turn on my mic during the filming of this clip, so I will have to do a voiceover. For the SPL test, I'll be using my Doom DVD, which has a very bass-heavy soundtrack during the intro scene. I did buy the 4K version of this movie, but for some reason they removed the bass-heavy soundtrack in that release. So if you're wanting to do a similar test at home, make sure to get the DVD version of this movie. I will be performing 2 SPL tests. The first SPL test will be with the stock LA110 to see how loud it will get. For the second test, I'll be disconnecting the factory amplifier and will be connecting a monoprice external subwoofer amplifier. This amplifier is rated for 400 watts, but on my bench I was able to get 285 watts of clean continuous power from it, which should be more than enough to push this driver. I have a feeling we will see a dramatic improvement in performance with the external amplifier. So without further ado, let's get started. For the SPL test, I'll be about 8 feet away from the subwoofer and I'll be using an SPL app on my phone to measure the loudness. The only speaker playing during this test will be the subwoofer. I have already dialed in the subwoofer to get the best performance from it, so let's see how it performs. The stock LA110 was able to achieve 92 decibels on this test. That's pretty good considering the amplifier is between 40 and 50 watts depending on the level of THD that your ears can put up with. For comparison, the Polk Monitor XT12 was able to achieve 101 decibels and the JBL 550P was able to achieve 97 decibels on this test. Now let's see what happens when you give this subwoofer the power that it deserves. Here I'm removing the driver from the cabinet and will solder new speaker wire to the terminals. I will then fish the speaker cable through one of the portholes so I can connect it to my external amplifier. Now let's see what this subwoofer can do when it has a much more powerful amplifier. That's impressive. 101 dB is right up there with the Polk Monitor XT12 and REL HT1205 in terms of output. And both of those subwoofers have a larger 12-inch driver too. Anything over 100 dB should be loud enough for most people who value their hearing. It just goes to show that the LA110 has potential when paired with the right amplifier. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but I think the amplifier of mine is probably faulty. Sometimes these things happen, but it's good to know that this subwoofer has potential to deliver some nice output when required. After putting the LA110 through my various testing parameters, I noticed the subwoofer performed best in small to medium sized rooms. When the subwoofer is placed in a room that is under 400 square feet, the bass was pretty strong and authoritative. But once you start placing this subwoofer in a room larger than 400 square feet, then I noticed the subwoofer was having trouble pressurizing the room with bass. I think a lot of this was due to the amplifier on my subwoofer, because it just doesn't have the power to move the driver with authority. Some of the things that I really like about this subwoofer are the cabinet construction and finish. The cabinet construction is one of the best that I have seen at this price point, and it will definitely put some of the other subwoofer cabinets in the $500 plus range to shame. So if you are a DIYer and want to modify this subwoofer, then this cabinet would be a great base to start from. My subwoofer is finished in espresso finish, and I was surprised by how real the fake wood grain looked. Cerwin-Vega went the extra mile to give the finish some texture in the finish, which many don't do at this price point. This texture gives you the impression that the finish might be real wood veneer, even though it's made from vinyl. My only complaint with this subwoofer is with the amplifier. Cerwin-Vega seemed to do a pretty good job with everything else, but the amplifier in my unit was definitely the weak link. No doubt this subwoofer has potential if the amplifier can push the driver to its full potential. All in all, not a bad first attempt from Cerwin-Vega. If you are just starting out in this hobby, I think the LA110 would make most people happy as long as they are reasonable with their expectations. While the LA110 doesn't offer quite the same value propositions as the other LA series speakers that I have reviewed, I still think it's a pretty decent offering from them. In my next video, I'll be taking a look at Cerwin-Vega's brand new flagship tower speaker, the LA365. At $349 each, these babies offer tremendous value for money, which I'll go over in my next video. This is a video you don't want to miss. If you'd like to see more videos like this, make sure to hit that like button. I treat likes as votes on which videos I should do more of. And that's my review of the Cerwin-Vega LA110 subwoofer. So long, and happy listening.